Hello, welcome to Truth Behind the Showcases, your global fashion retail and supply chain podcast. Today, Monday, June 22nd. India gets zero-tariff UK access in 23 days, and the race is already on. Bangladesh exports engine contracts for the 11th straight month. Converse just hit 15-year revenue low, and Nike's answer only raised more questions. Plus, Ralph Lauren begins its third decade at Wimbledon. I'm Sedat Sezer, breaking down the news and insights you need to start your day. Let's get started. The sourcing map for global apparel is being redrawn right now, and it's happening on three fronts simultaneously. India's running a trade offensive for real precision. The India-UK Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement takes effect July 15th, 23 days from today. From that date, Indian textile and apparel exports enter the UK at zero duty. The Confederation of Indian Textile Industry said it plainly. India moves from a structurally disadvantaged position against Bangladesh in the UK market to competitive par overnight. That's the UK. On the EU front, the India-EU free trade deal is targeting a signature by year-end, with the two sides together representing close to a quarter of global economic output. And as of this week, the US trade representative is in New Delhi for comprehensive trade talks. This isn't a single deal. This is a trade architecture being built simultaneously across India's three most important export markets. For any sourcing team that hasn't revisited origin allocation in the past 6 months, the math is changing underneath you. Now, looking at how this connects to another major shift, the US just formalized something critical. Customs and Border Protection released comprehensive forced label enforcement guidance this week. It covers with specific documentation requirements for cotton and textile supply chains. High-risk origins face pressures from both the trade advantage side and the compliance side at once. India's competitive positioning is improving on both counts simultaneously. Looking at the other side of the coin, it gets interesting because India's rising tide isn't lifting all boats. Bangladesh's ready-made garment exports ran 3.41% behind last year for the July through May period, dropping to $35.3 billion. That decline didn't just stay in traditional markets like the US, EU, and UK. It spread to non-traditional destinations, including Australia, Japan, and Russia. That cross-market breadth tells you this isn't primarily tariff exposure. It's structural competitiveness pressure. Roughly 40 factories have closed over 3 years, with smaller exporters taking the hardest hit. This week, the chief of Bangladesh Investment Development Authority confirmed what factory operators have been saying for months. The gas and energy crisis is the single biggest investment barrier in the country. Relief from energy infrastructure isn't expected before 2027 or 2028. That's 2 more full-year elevated production costs before the structural constraints begins to ease. Layered on top of that is freight. The Drewry World Container Index crossed $3,969 per 40 food bucks last week. This is an 18-month high, jumping nearly 12% in just a single week. MSC has announced $6,000 per container to Northern Europe from July 1st. Factories already running on compressed margins are absorbing another cost hit simultaneously. There is one more signal worth folding in. Fitch Trading flagged that China's domestic retail sales declined 0.6% in May. That is the first contraction since 2022. When domestic demand softens in the world's largest production economy, excess capacity goes looking for alternative exits. That adds competitive pressure on every other origin at the exact same date. Same pattern, different market. The US consumer demand picture for May just landed, and on the surface, it looks strong. Total retail sales reached $275.2 billion in May, up 6.7% year-on-year. Apparel and accessories specialty growth grew 4%. E-commerce was up approximately 10%. Sports and outdoor led all categories at 11%. In the UK, retail volumes rose 1.2% in May after an April dip. Non-store retailing jumped 6.1%, the strongest monthly reading since February 2025. But here's the read that actually matters. Strip out inflation, and US core retail grew just 0.2%. Clothing inflation is running at 4.8% year-on-year. A meaningful portion of that 4% apparel sales growth comes from price increases, not volume. The consumer is spending more, they are not necessarily buying more. A UBS analyst described future spending as more episodic and event-driven. That's the right mental model. Demand is real, but it concentrates around promotional moments, not flowing steadily through the calendar. If you are making inventory or forward order decisions right now, the gap between volume growth and volume growth is the number that changes your planning assumptions. While all this is happening, let's bring the brand strategy lens in, because the contrast between what's working and what isn't couldn't be sharper. Converse just reported a 35% revenue decline at $664 million. It is the brand's lowest quarterly revenue in 15 years. Marketing budget was cut 44%, down to $24 million. And the brand's sole creative momentum, NBA star Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, just got moved to the main Nike roster, while simultaneously being designated Converse creative director. Moving your star player is not a sign of confidence. Sales speculation is circulating, with financial institutions reportedly advising Nike on option. From where I sit, the question isn't whether Converse gets separated, it's what the buyer inherits. Vance gives you a useful benchmark from the exact same week. First US growth in 14 consecutive quarters. Old School 36 sales stock X are up to 800%. Average resale price is up 40%. Heritage footwear demand is not the problem. Converse execution is the problem. For a potential acquirer, those are very different situations to price. There is one more signal on my radar before we close, and it sits at the total opposite end of the brand confidence spectrum. Ralph Lauren enters its third decade as Wimbledon's official outfitter, making it its tournament longest running apparel partner. This year brings a first, a purple label capsule designed specifically for the event. Italy made. Cotton cashmere blazers, silk cotton knitwear, leather detailed pieces, alongside the classic polo Wimbledon collection. The brand crosses $8 billion in annual revenue in its last fiscal year. Wimbledon opens June 29th. Here's the brand strategy read. Most partnerships rotate as audiences shift. 30 years at one event does something different. It becomes institutional. You stop buying audience access and start owning an association. The decision to introduce purple label into this activation is the tell. They are using a 30-year platform to pull their highest price point line into a concentrated premium consumer moment. That's brand architecture, not just marketing spend. The main question I want to leave you with today is this. India gains zero-tariff UK access in 23 days, closes an EU deal by year-end, and opens US talks this week. Bangladesh is contracting. Freight just hit an 18-month high. If you're a sourcing director who hasn't revisited your origin allocation in the past 6 months, what are you waiting for? That's all for today's analysis. To make sure you never miss the insights behind the numbers, hit subscribe wherever you get your podcast. I'm Sedat Sezer. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you tomorrow, and until then, stay ahead of the curve.